any other sort of affiliation that you'd like to indicate, please do that as well. But really the purpose of these meetings is to hear from you all. So we do not have a formal presentation this evening. We will start out with a 2-minute video about the project. And then after that, we'll just have an informal discussion. So if we could go ahead and start the video, that would be great.
Charlotte is America's Queen City, a diverse community that continues to experience rapid growth. Yet many communities in Charlotte have not enjoyed the benefits of thoughtful planning. Without a citywide plan for growth, these communities are often passed over for valuable investments in policy support, creating inequities and a lack of balance. The Charlotte Future 2040 Comprehensive Plan is taking a new, community-driven approach to guiding growth in all of Charlotte's communities by focusing on 10 types of places unique to Charlotte. Planning the right mix of place types so all areas of Charlotte have a variety of places to live, work, and play can help us ensure equitable growth over time. Input from diverse communities has helped us prioritize access to quality housing, employment, services, and amenities for all residents. So, what happens next? We need as many people like you to provide feedback on the draft plan. A plan including community comments will be adopted by City Council. The community will share their vision, improving existing places or new places in their neighborhoods by mapping the place types. While the community is mapping place types, the city will be finalizing the Unified Development Ordinance and a new set of zoning districts that will correspond to each place type. Using the future place type map as a guide, communities will help decide which of the corresponding zoning districts will apply to individual parcels within a given place. And we'll be following up to ensure that all of Charlotte has a voice in deciding what types of investments their area needs. The success of this plan relies on you. Your input and feedback can still help shape the plan and its implementation. Advancing equity and breaking down barriers to opportunity is essential for all of our communities to thrive. We are living in historic times, and now is the time to work together for a more inclusive and sustainable future. The City of Charlotte is committed to implementing a 2040 comprehensive plan that is inclusive of feedback from all Charlotte residents. You're invited to join us and engage in a deeper understanding of how the plan will shape Charlotte's future. Visit cltfuture2040.com to learn more.
So thank you for that. And I'll mention that we'll be posting links in the chat during our conversation. We can probably go ahead and start by posting a link to the plan document in there. And if there's any comments that you have that you'd like recorded in our comments matrix, which we also have a record of all the comments received on our website, place those in the chat too as well. But as I mentioned, this is really an opportunity for you to provide comments and ask questions and have discussion. So whoever wants to start out, go ahead. We can use the raise hand feature, or you can just jump in. We have a fairly small group, so I think we can probably manage that. And if it gets to where we need to use the raise hand feature, then maybe we'll do that. So who would like to start?
I'll go ahead. My name is Doyle George. I'm a lawyer here in Charlotte and South Charlotte. And I've taken a look at the 2040 plan and discussed it with one of the people who was partly responsible for its development. And I have questions regarding the implementation of the plan. I don't know what community area mapping is. I read it. It's a broad sort of general concept, and I'd like to know its relationship to the current zoning ordinance and its density requirements, and perhaps how that's going to be worked into the UDO, which is
Sure,
general
great
other
question to start out with. So the plan, the comprehensive plan is a policy document, and the Unified Development Ordinance, which contains the zoning ordinance rewrite, is regulatory. So those are how those two things are paired. The regulations have to be based on policy. So they're two separate things. The policy provide the vision, and on the regulatory side, the UDO provides the tools to help implement that vision. And the first step that was shown in the video would be adopting the comprehensive plan, which kind of lays out the place type palette, which provides, I'd call it land use plus. So land use, all of the city of Charlotte has future land use recommendations, but that's really just like a two-dimensional, what kind of use can you expect? It doesn't give you any idea of height or context or form or any of those types of things. Place types goes a step further to give more surety around, and more predictability for the community and developers as far as what's the expectation if someone develops under this place type, basically what can I expect it to look like and, the uses to be. So the first step in adopting the comprehensive plan is agreeing upon what are those place type, what are the place types, what's the palette of place types that we'll be mapping. After the plan's adopted, we will start the place type mapping, and that will be another community conversation. We'll break the city and county into different districts and talk about it in that way. After that, we traditionally, over the years, we haven't done a comprehensive plan since 1975, but that doesn't mean we've not been doing any planning. Typically, most of our planning efforts were what we would call small area plans that look at very small geographies within the city and kind of do what we're doing right now, but for a much smaller area. By adopting the comprehensive plan, we bring everyone in Charlotte up to kind of the same level playing field as far as policies, but it doesn't mean we'll not still have to do those kind of more intense looks at certain areas of the city. And so that's really what place type mapping is. And then the community area plans that you spoke of is really small area planning, which is another tool in our toolbox.
Well, let me ask you a very specific question. In adopting the UDO, will you be eliminating the density limits, such as R3, R8MF, those classifications?
So, and again, the UDO, we're talking about the comprehensive plan tonight. So the UDO is a separate project. I just want to be clear on that for everyone. This is the policy side, and the UDO is the regulatory side. But as a part of the Unified Development Ordinance, it will contain a rewrite of the zoning ordinance and then many of the other regulations that affect land development. So in rewriting the zoning ordinance, there will be new zoning districts that will, some of them will be very similar to the ones that we have today, but they may have a different name, and others may be new districts. The districts that we have today really don't keep in step with the type of development that we're seeing in our community. And kind of as evidence to that, it's really, you see the proliferation of conditional rezonings. So we're kind of doing all this work on the front end so that we can have greater predictability about the type of development that can be expected and have zoning districts that work with the place types. As the video mentioned, each place type will have a limited palette of zoning districts that implement that place type. So somebody won't be able to go in the ordinance and just pick any district that works. They'll be paired with the place types and linked much more than they are today. But they will still have the same regulatory components that they do today.
Well, actually, unfortunately, that doesn't really answer my question. What I'm concerned about is the densities in your particular place types. When you create these place types in these let's call them small area plans, because that's what I'm familiar with. What do you want, whatever you want to call it, the community area mapping. Are you going to have densities to, and are there going to be densities specified for within these areas? Are you going to actually specify actual densities, or are we going to just do what we do now under the urban residential classification where there is no density mentioned and the planning department decides what's appropriate?
Yeah, but you can get a density in a variety of ways, and form can get to density too. So you don't always have to say, to be honest with you, saying 8 dwelling units per acre is kind of nebulous because it really depends on the parcel, and how that parcel can be developed. And 8 dwelling units per acre may only net out to be like 6 or something like that. So in the place types, we typically on the residential side have stories. But on the zoning side is where the more specific limits that you're talking about, that's where those will come in. And that is in the Unified Development Ordinance. So on the policy side, it provides more of a range, and we typically talk about it in terms of stories.
Why is the UDO not being developed exactly at the same time as the 2040 plan? Why are they not, you're asking city council to vote on the 2040 plan without having any idea what the UDO is?
Kathy, are you okay?
Yeah,
I think you froze up a little bit.
The weather around here is really bad, so my internet is very unstable. I'm sorry.
You want me to repeat that?
So because the zoning districts implement the place types, they really have to come on the heels. They have to know what the place type is in order to know what the districts are that they're writing the regulations for, if that makes sense. So they're being developed somewhat simultaneously, but really we can't write districts until we have adopted place types.
But the general framework for the UDO is important. I mean,
Sure.
Tark Bakare made that pretty clear in the last city council meeting. I don't understand why they're being developed in this way, where the council is being asked to approve a broad plan like this without knowing the details of how it's going to be implemented. Doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. And we've posted links in the chat. I don't know if you know how to access the chat down in the toolbar at the bottom, but we've posted links to both certain sections of the UDO and the UDO site if you'd like to take a look at that.
Well, I've looked at your website under the UDO, and there's very little there. Very little. Very, very little. In other words, shouldn't you be explaining specifically, after you've mapped the city, how you intend to actually implement it? I mean, you want to give predictability to developers, and you also should give predictability to the community. How do you do that if you don't know how you're going to do the UDO?
Well, the UDO draft is not out yet, but I think maybe I'm not being clear in that you would first need to map your policies, and the place types are the policies. The zoning ordinance provides the regulations that pair with those policies. So there will be zoning mapping that is done after the adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance. You can't map what you haven't adopted yet, what you haven't agreed upon.
Kathy, it might be helpful. My name is Alicia. I'm the project manager for the comp plan. If someone posted the link, there's a ordinance advisory committee that's reviewing the development of the zoning ordinance now. All of their meeting information, presentations are online, which provides the level of detail that you want to know about the regulatory side of it. Closer to when we start mapping the place types, the UDO process, Unified Development Ordinance process, will be rolled out and moving along in lockstep in terms of engagement and how all the pieces fit together. But in principle, the comp plan kind of lays out how we want to grow, where we want to grow, and what that might look like. And then the technical part starts mapping out what the plan lays out in section 4 is how all those pieces fit together. And then it lays out even further once the plan's adopted, all the details that you're asking about.
But you must have drafts of the UDO if you're.
We don't, we please check the website. That's the best I can tell you. I don't have the drafts. I just have a draft plan. That's the best I can tell you.
Yeah, it's a problem because I deal in practicalities, not generalities. And I know that the 2040 plan is a series of generalities. That's great. It's great. But it doesn't provide the level of detail that people like me like to know, especially when I'm representing a community organization. Or,
that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Other questions and comments?
Hi, my name is Cameron Watson, and I am a local dance artist and organizer in the arts community. I gotta say, this whole thing is a little over my head, but I did glance through it. If there's a summary version, I'm in for that.
There is an executive summary if you didn't find it.
Oh, I did not. Yes.
Yeah, we can post a link to that for you in the chat.
I did look through it the best I could. With arts being my thing, I noticed that it's not listed as one of the place types, arts and culture.
Don't click on the hand that brings you up.
And I also noticed that that it's not listed as a goal. I think there is a goal that's like retain our identity and charm or something. And I would argue that that because we haven't invested very much space and money in Charlotte in arts and culture, we don't have much of a identity. So I would definitely, I wonder about the word retain. I would hope develop or find or, something. But I think arts and culture is more central than it is labeled here to creating the kind of community, especially one that really invests equitably, because all of our arts and culture event spaces are uptown. So like spreading those spaces out more is certainly a way to create equity in diverse communities by not only creating arts and culture spaces there, but also giving space for those voices and those stories to be shared.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cameron. That is a great comment. And for the most part, you're right that the arts and culture component is for the most part in the retain our identity and charm. And so we'll definitely take a look at what your comments are and consider those. I would mention that we've been doing these community conversations for several months now. And part of that was focus groups on segments of the community that we didn't think we were reaching in other avenues, other outreach avenues. And one of those was we had a couple of focus groups with directly with the arts community. So we have received input from those folks as well, but we thank you for yours too.
Hi, my name is Sarah Hart, and I've read through and I've been at some council meetings when they're discussing certain topics, and there's a lot of lofty goals, obviously, within this plan, and some do seem to compete against each other. I read one of the comments on the plan that somebody had put and agree with that there does seem to be some competition for what we want to do. Developing doesn't always meet well with retaining our tree canopy. And so, trees are kind of my passion. So it's kind of hard seeing what's going on in Charlotte right now when all the trees are, when something's getting developed, everything is kind of taken out. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, how does that all work together when we have some big goals that kind of compete with each other?
Sure. So that's a great point. I'm not sure if you're aware, there's a variety of other plans that are going on simultaneous to the comprehensive plan being developed. There's, and one of those is a tree canopy action plan. So we are working with all of those different partners that are developing more specific plans. And the comprehensive plan is really an umbrella document for those. But we have received some feedback about more specificity around trees and those things. And we're working with the tree canopy action plan staff to kind of beef some of that up.
Hi, this is Rob Nanfield with Revic. Actually, I have two questions, if I'm allowed, but I'd like to do a follow-up on that last one. In terms of the action plan, is that something that's going to be approved by City Council, or how's that going to work?
Action plan.
The tree canopy
Oh,
action?
the tree canopy action plan, yes. So maybe we can, they've posted a link in the chat to that.
Okay.
So if you want to take a look at that, you can as well. That has had a stakeholders group that's been working on that particular plan. And I think maybe for the past 12 to 18 months, maybe.
Okay, but City Council is going to approve that? Or?
Yes.
Okay. The question I had is, this has obviously been going on for a little while. Has the city attorney been contacted as you've been going through putting places or putting pieces into the plan to get his feedback on some things that might not be legal in terms of recommendations and things like that?
Sure. Yes, we have been working with our legal staff throughout. We have an interdepartmental team of all departments within the city, and then we have county partners as well, and other third sector type agencies that we have a large interdepartmental team that we work with, and we've gone through the policy framework a number of times. And some of the items that are implementation items, they are not legal today, but this is a 20-year plan. So if that's the direction that our community wants to go, we at least need to begin investigating, what would it take to potentially change that legal environment. So yes, we have been doing that.
Okay. Having said that, I know the planning director is on record saying that you're going to look at revising the plan potentially in 5 years. So has there been any thought into, since you're going to potentially revise the plan in 5 years, taking the things out that are specifically illegal right now, and then revisiting that maybe in 5 years down the road? Because it's not likely that the General Assembly is going to change leadership in that period of time. I guess it's possible, but.
Well, very true, but there needs to be a lot of groundwork that we would need to do in research and, kind of getting all of the methodology laid out before we even approached the General Assembly. So those that are more long-term goals, there's short-term goals, medium and long, and I'd say short-term are within the next 5 years. Many of those things obviously are not that, but they would probably be more in the 20-year range, but they need enough background work to kind of get them to a place that you can start approaching other elected officials with before you do that. So that would, that would be short term in that. It wouldn't make sense to us to take that out when we know we need to do that work. And to your point about updating the plan, we are committed to updating the plan every 5 years. So that is something that we have said, and we know, plans are documents that are really snapshots in time. And we know that our cities are living organisms and they change, and there's all sorts of unanticipated things that happen. So we are very committed to revisiting it on a regular basis.
And Kathy, if I could add to Rob's question about the legality of the plan is a policy document, it's not legally binding. And nor is there anything in there that is illegal because of that. There are some things that we share that will require enabling legislation should we explore that, but there's nothing in the plan that is illegal because it's not a legally binding document.
Well, and I appreciate that distinction. I think it's just, the concern is just that this plan that's laid out is going to be implemented by the UDO. So anything in the plan is fair game in the UDO.
Not everything, Rob.
Well, but that's what's been
not the whole plan.
We'll just agree to disagree on that. That's fine. If I can just have one more question, I don't want to monopolize the time, but I'm sorry about this like Phantom of the Opera thing I got going with the sun here. It's this one window that's high up and no blinds on it. So goals 9 and 10, if you go to Appendix C, the goals are retain our identity and charm. And then the last one is fiscally responsible. If you go down the objectives for all those, the last column has the metric, and there's no metric for either of those goals. Is there a reason for that?
Most of the discussion about the metric is, and we've gotten this like every time we've done a community conversation, on the implementation side, and a lot of the metrics will be developed as we move. So some of them have metrics today, and other ones, the metrics will be developed as we move through the process. So you'll see in there the equitable growth framework and all kinds of other tools. And there'll be a dashboard so that we're committed to measuring, what's working and what's not working, and, determining what those metrics are. And in some cases, there's other programs and projects that other departments in the city are responsible for. So we're making sure that we work with those partners to agree upon what the most sensible metric is for each of those.
Okay, thanks.
I'd like to jump in here. My name's Alan Banks. I'm a home builder here in Charlotte, but also involved with Ribic. And thank you for those of you who put all the months in preparation of this plan. And I think we support the idea of Charlotte needs a plan, or else any idea becomes a good idea. And this can point us in that direction. It would seem as if you've probably gotten, and I think by your own comments, lots of feedback on this plan, lots of comments on this plan, both online and then also through these meetings here. What's going to be the method to incorporate some of this into the plan before the city council votes on it? What's the process for the feedback actually getting into the plan?
Great question. So all of the feedback that we've been getting, we've been keeping a comment matrix. It's pretty detailed at the staff level, and then we have that online too. I don't know if someone's posted the link to the chat, but if you haven't, could you do that now? So all the reason for keeping the comments in a matrix and sorting them in a way that would be more digestible for elected and appointed officials, because our planning commission has an interest in that as well, is to keep it transparent. And so we won't have multiple drafts floating around, because that just gets confusing to everyone and it's not real obvious where the changes have been. So typically we would have a public comment draft. Council would vote on what the changes are, and those would be shown in the matrix, and then it would be a direct link before here's the changes that are being made, and then we would publish a final draft. There is the possibility that we may have some sort of an interim draft that makes some of the revisions. I'm not real sure about that right now. That direction would come from city leadership and council. But really the idea and the intent behind the matrix is for transparency and to keep it clear. So there is a link in the chat, and you can see all the comments that we've received to date there.
I appreciate that, and thank you for posting the link, and I see that here. I'm not sure I followed, and it's probably my ignorance of municipal policies and procedures. But if I understood, council is going to receive, or has received, of course, the same document that is available to us. They would also receive a matrix to some degree synthesizing all these comments into something. And then they're going to be asked to vote on this actual document, the actual 320-page document, with the idea being that it might be changed soon after that as other comments. Okay. How about help me out on that, Alyssa?
You were almost there, Alan. You were almost there.
There we go. Thank
Kathy,
you.
you mind? You mind if I? Okay.
No,
so,
go right ahead.
So it's comments from everybody, including them, because we've been having small meetings with them. The idea of the point of putting it online is so there's complete transparency and so everyone can see what's being received. So they're updated a couple of times a week. Council sees that, they get that, they know it. We go back, start categorizing and synthesizing them in a way that's digestible for internal staff, elected appointed officials, and the public. So everybody's on the same page about if the issues around affordable housing or transportation, kind of put it in big digestible buckets, but still keeping true to what people told us. Then council starts to have discussions around revisions. Everything from grammatical spellings and all that stuff that they just told us to do without discussion to some of the things you guys are concerned about. What's aspirational versus what's actually real. Like that was something that they've asked us to really think about. All that will be online, in council meetings, open, honest discussion, and their decision to make. And so once they tell us, based on community feedback, discussions, to Rob's point, discussing with attorneys, all of that, they're asking us to potentially produce another draft for another round of public comment. Everybody comments, we read, we do this dance again. And then council says, okay, do we need to make more revisions? If so, let's produce it one more time. And then what the adoption would possibly be is the final document. Now, in the past, it hasn't been like that. And that might be what you might be remembering. It's usually one document and then a whole list of changes. And then all those changes go to council and then a final document is produced after adoption. This council says, no, we're going to do it a little bit different. And it's going to be open and transparent because of, we hadn't done this in 50 years. And so we're really trying to make sure that with each step, we're bringing the community along. So that's kind of what we're thinking. Now, how that plays out, council will make that decision on Monday night, I think. Like in terms of dates and timeline.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification of that.
I know it's a little muddy, but we're trying to simplify it. And each time, I promise you, it was more difficult when I started 15 years ago to now. So it's we're getting better each time.
So Cameron has a question too. Are the comments here going to be incorporated into the comment matrix, or do they have to be incorporated, submitted versus via an online form? So we're recording the meeting, and it's helpful to us that if you want a comment made, that you could type it into the chat. That would be the easiest for us. But we are taking notes and capturing this, and we record the chat as well. Other questions and comments?
Yeah, this is Jimmy Basilio with the Housing Justice Coalition. I just wanted to ask, as far as like place type mapping, let's say, we proceed with everything, this gets adopted at a certain point. What is going to be like the procedure for bringing communities into the place type mapping process, and how will it be decided what their community is, like as far as like neighborhood 1, neighborhood 2, industrial, because there's a lot of concern, I guess, with residents in West Charlotte as to whether or not, instead of qualifying maybe as a neighborhood 1 or a neighborhood 2, they might be more considered like an industrial area, especially since growth along the West Corridor is kind of concentrated around light manufacturing, or with the arrival micro factory that just sort of was announced today. So how will place type mapping, how will communities get communication about sitting down, doing the place type mapping? Because as I understand, I think there's like a 6-month period where that's supposed to happen.
That's right, and we're developing our community engagement strategy for that piece of it right now, so that as soon as the plan is adopted, we have, all our ducks in a row and the methodology, and we're ready to go. But at high level, the city would be divided into kind of sub areas or planning areas, and those conversations would happen at that level, and there would be engagement. There's, as of right now, we have like 50 something meetings planned over the next, however, whenever this is adopted, the next few months afterwards, where we'll do community engagement to talk about what place types are appropriate where, and that's a community conversation.
So will communities get to decide those place types, or is that going to be a top-down decision?
We'll take out a map to get the discussion started, and that map is based on kind of a translation of what our adopted future land use is today over to the place type palette, and that'll be our starting point. And then as we always do with all, our other area plans and those things, it's a community discussion around how those place types would be mapped.
Thank you.
And then obviously it's voted upon by city council.
But Jimmy, the palette is in the plan now. If you want to just kind of peruse what's in there and what would be.
Yeah, I don't know if we've posted a link, but if we haven't, can someone post a link to directly to the palette? It's in the complete community section.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name's Judson Stringfellow. Thank you for having one of these in the evening. I've tried to figure out a time to attend one of these, and this worked out well for me, so thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
My primary question is really about the history of place type zoning in other areas, the implementation of it, and the effects of it. I do want to go back to something that Phantom of the Opera asked a minute ago, and did I understand you correct that the justification for including things like impact fees and community benefit agreements in this is that it's not a legal document, not a legally binding document?
Right, it is not a legally binding document, and so some of those are kind of what we call big ideas in the plan, and then a lot of them have case studies from other communities that are paired with them, so you can see how they've been implemented in Detroit and other places. It is not, adopting this plan does not mean that tool is implemented at that time. That's part of the implementation strategy, and many of those things, like I mentioned earlier, are ambitious and require a lot of work and study on the front end before we would even be able to pursue them.
Well, to that end, I mean, it would seem to me that you might want to segregate out and put the ambitious, far-fetched ideas, the things that can't actually be done, separate from the things that really can be done, so that people can focus on what actually can be done. But that aside, my question really was, where is a comparable community to Charlotte where this place type zoning has been adopted for a period of time, implemented and adopted for, like say 10 years or so? And what's the effect been on particularly like workforce housing? There's a lot of focus on affordable housing, but workforce housing is something I think has been overlooked a lot lately for people that are, the basic working community, or working members of the community out there that are seeing a significant increase in home prices.
Yeah, the place type concept, and that's a land use policy. So it's separate from, the zoning districts implement the place types, but place types really are a more modern national standard. And there's many communities in North Carolina, small and large, that use them. And there's other communities throughout the country like Denver and San Antonio and a variety of other places that use the place type concept. So it's not a new idea at all. Actually, it's 10 plus years old. But it's new to our community. I think Raleigh uses it. So there's a variety of other cities. In early stages in our research, I think we had like 80 something communities that we looked at.
Well, and looking at it online, I see where a lot of communities, a lot of cities are talking about or in the process of implementing it. I couldn't find exactly anything that showed a comparable sized town that's had it in effect for more than a couple of years. Looked like San Antonio's goal for implementing it was 2020. So, I just wonder what, it seems to me like this is going to drive up the cost of a lot of housing. My concern is, it's a fad. Everybody wants to jump on it because it's a current fad, but is it really what's the best thing in the long run for housing affordability for the workforce?
Sure, and that's a great comment, and we'll definitely take that into consideration. And you're right. I mean, the planning, like any other industry or however you would want to call it. I mean, everything has trends, and there are different trends. And I think that this is probably the concept that we think works better for the stage of development that our community is in today. And now we're seeing a lot more, mixed use development over the past 20 years. We've really kind of shifted to that, and, feel like that just calling something retail or office is not really giving enough detail and predictability as far as what we actually mean by that. So place types are just land use, and then they add some other components to them. But thank you very much for that comment.
Thank you.
Other questions and comments?
Yes, I have a question.
Hi.
Hi, this is Charles Breitbart. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit late showing up to the game. Sorry about that, but very happy about what everybody is doing to gather this, get community feedback and so forth. I don't know if this is something that has already been covered or not, but in page 103 policies 2.1 and 2.2, making reference to the duplexes and other multi-tenant family units being placed in single family home lots. Is that something that everybody has already discussed here?
Not in this particular conversation that we're doing right now tonight, but we've heard it throughout. The neighborhood diversity and inclusion goal includes, kind of expanding the type of housing that's allowed in traditionally single family neighborhoods. So it's not eliminating single family. And we have these type of units in many neighborhoods today. And you can do duplexes on corner lots in many zoning districts. It just kind of expands the capacity to do that, but it doesn't mean that every neighborhood would suddenly shift over to having duplexes overnight. There are standards that are written into it that really the goal of it is that they fit in the context of where they are, so they meet the same setbacks and height requirements and all of that a single family unit would, and you wouldn't have parking in the front and all those kinds of things.
Our neighborhood is an example of that. It was built in the late 70s, and actually we live that reality now. And what that means is we have duplexes, we have condominiums, townhomes, and single family homes all together in the same area. I think that it would be a very good idea for council to be able to meet with our members of our community, specifically myself included, and be able to actually give them a tour of what our reality is so they can take that into consideration for what they're going to be doing into the future. It introduces its challenges for sure. And many of those challenges are things that we have spoken about in the past with members of council we're experiencing now. And a lot of those things need to be addressed, I think, with an existing community where you have that happening before you can proceed forward. Because if you look at whether it's existing codes or what have you, and how everything applies, is to kind of get that worked out with what we already have going on before you can even begin to apply that into the future. So I guess what I'm doing is kind of saying that their perception is our reality. You know, we already have that here. There are some things that need to be fixed. It's something that the community can't do. We're relying upon the city for that. And I'd be most happy to invite anybody that would like to come out here that we can share that with, and also be able to provide a working example for what they may want to consider into the future based on what they're seeing now.
Great, that would be wonderful. If you want to provide your contact information either in the chat, or you can email us, or you
Sure.
can direct message one of us.
Yeah,
we'd be happy to do that.
that would be great. That would be great. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions or comments?
I just wanted, this is Sarah again, and as I've mentioned, I have a passion for trees, and so, but sometimes, and nothing against anybody attending this, is that, you know, I go to some meetings and it does seem like there's a heavy representation of people involved in either real estate or building, contractors, and I guess sometimes I do feel like a small fish in this big pond trying to make my voice heard. So I guess, and it's probably not an answerable question, is how things are weighted for, because the council, I guess, is the one approving this. So it's really up to them and how they weight the different feedback they're being given, because it's probably giving in a way where it's not, where you're going to, you know, compile different people together or anything like that. I guess it's more, I guess my question is like, how is it that a citizen is trying to give their voice and it doesn't always, maybe you don't think it's going to be heard, but I know you guys have been doing a great job with the documentation. So it's just, I guess, showing up and being heard is really all you can do.
At this point, I mean, I will mention, and you probably already know this, so over the past couple of years that we've been developing the plan, we've had a variety of different engagement methods, you know, COVID and then pre-COVID as well. And we've been very intentional about, it was easier to do pre-COVID to collect demographic information and geographic information to see, you know, what are the voices that, where are the voices that we're not hearing? Why are we not hearing from these folks? And what can we do to better reach them? So we've been really, really intentional about that, going back after each phase of engagement. And we've also had a stakeholder group that has over 400 members in it, and it's open to anyone during the process as well. So really though, at the phase that we're in right now, yes, you're right. It's showing up and being heard and contacting your elected officials. And in a few minutes, we'll post, there's an opportunity to speak on the 22nd, and then a few others if you would like to sign up for that, because you just need to sign up in order to be able to participate. And then each speaker is given like a certain allotment of time, but that is the best way to be heard at this point in the process.
Sure.
But we are sharing the comments and all of that too with elected officials. But
yeah, and the city, I think, has provided a lot of avenues for people to make comments and say stuff. So and the reaching out, because I have seen that firsthand on the city reaching out. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you. And I think Maddie has just posted in the chat the link to the public comment session, and also if you want to sign up to be a speaker.
May I ask one other question? I don't want to take too much of your time, but obviously this plan is linked to transportation. And, you know, the possibility of getting a 1 cent sales tax increase seems remote at this point in time. What impact is that going to have on your plan?
So as I mentioned, there's a variety of other more specific plans that are going on at the same time as the comprehensive plan is. And the comprehensive plan is an umbrella document to those. So there's Charlotte Moves, and then there's also the Silver Line planning. that's going on. So the sales tax would obviously help fund those things, but not having that passed wouldn't mean that, there's no way of achieving those goals in some other way.
Well, do you have some short-term goals that you can achieve? For example, I live on Providence Road, and which is Vi Lyles has, our mayor, has referred to as the gateway from Union County. That tells you quite a bit. I don't know, and she has said that she's not aware of any mitigation efforts that are going to be brought about in the near future to make traffic better on Providence Road. So are there some things you can do? Increase bus service, better bus service? I mean, what do you have in mind?
Two things. Thanks for that question. And I'm only answering because I was slightly involved in the Charlotte Moves work. So the 1 cent sales tax, I'll jump to that, was one of the funding options, but not the only one. So if that doesn't work, there were other options mentioned as to how to fund the plan. And the plan, so there's options there. Two, part of this work connected to a couple of regional transportation projects, Connect Beyond, which looks at regional transportation, the bus priority study that CATS is doing, and their 2030 system plan, which talks really about rail. And one of the bus priority study, they were looking at Providence as a priority corridor, and also in Connect Beyond. And so they're looking at that as an option. I think part of that larger mobility study looked at rail to Ballantyne, like that's one of the ideas that was in there as well. So there are a couple of mobility options, big ticket items, but we all know that that also has to be supplemented with more of the smaller vehicular connections, bicycle, greenways, and all of that. So when people talk about Charlotte Moves, it was, yeah, a little bit about rail, but a whole lot more about all the other stuff that could happen should that rail 1 cent thing not happen too. So there's a couple of options, but Providence Road was a part of that, is a part of that bus priority consideration in the
What about, also, I wanted to ask you in connection with all of that, what about regional cooperation with the surrounding counties and even South Carolina? I mean, we have a lot of commuters from York County. Why in the world are they getting a free ride here? I'd like to know that. Why is Mecklenburg County required to pay the entire cost of this?
I would say that might be why it stopped. because we couldn't get the other people to participate. I think there's a couple of things that are happening. The Charlotte Move study was a task force commissioned by the mayor to think about a transformational mobility network that kind of emanated from Charlotte to the other areas. What was happening on a parallel track is the Connect Beyond work that does engage a lot of the regional partners. And so what is happening now is they're just taking a step back and to improve those connections between more of that regional work and that Charlotte work, and how can we all get on the same page. And then there will be some challenges similar to what we're talking about in terms of aspirational versus real. I would say, in this climate, the 1% was aspirational, right? But that doesn't mean that it's not needed. And so sometimes you have to put it out there, test it, and then retreat, and then pivot to the next option, because the need is still there. We just have to think differently about what tool might help us get to that goal we're trying to all achieve. But those are good questions about mobility. That's just as important as all these land use discussions we're having. Because if people can't get to those things, then the viability and kind of the vitality of those uses and those places diminishes if the connections can't be friendly, accessible, and functional.
Yeah, density does not work without transportation.
Absolutely.
And I think Taiwo has said the same thing many times.
I think we all can nod to that one.
Right, but the trouble is that, why don't you take a page from the books in Philadelphia and New York, and I mean, you know, New Jersey and Pennsylvania kind of go together. New York and Connecticut go together as well. I mean, they have regional authorities. What's going on here? I mean, I'm from the
Listen.
Northeast. What's going on?
Listen, I won't argue with that, but what I will say is that Charlotte's a young city and we're learning. It's almost not even fair to compare us to those New England cities that are like way older than us and had a lot of time to get it wrong and get it right. But I think regionalism is becoming more common speak for us as a community. If you think about it, 10, 15 years ago, we weren't talking about it as much as we are now. And I think as we continue to understand that the impacts of how we grow and how it extends beyond our boundaries and that we need our regional partners, I think it'll become a more robust discussion moving forward. But I won't argue with you on that. There's a couple of other authorities I would think about too, but I'm just gonna stop because Rod will tell me it's illegal.
Okay. Well, thank you for trying to explain that. I do appreciate it.
All right, you woke the sleeping bear. One more quick question, just quick.
No.
Just quick. I don't want to be an elongator, and you don't have to answer it now. You can answer it later if you want.
Okay. Okay.
The reference was made to Raleigh, and when we were talking about place types earlier, and in this case, the mapping is coming after the comp plan, and it's my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, that Raleigh did it the other way. They did mapping ahead of the comp plan.
No. They did it afterwards, and it was. Go ahead, Kathy.
Their place type mapping was not a public process. So their place types were mapped at the staff level prior to the zoning being.
Yep.
Yeah. So kind of more of the robust engagement happened around the zoning side of it.
Yep.
So
the guys that did it actually work in our department. So yeah.
Okay, so there was no mapping done prior to the comp plan in Raleigh.
Nope.
No.
Okay. All right.
The problem with Austin is that they did their comp plan, their land use, and their zoning all at the same time. They were trying to do it all in one swoop. I mean, people mentioned Austin, and it was, yeah, we know what happened with that one. There's some lessons learned with that one too.
Well, thanks for taking your time to do these. And I'm really not that crabby. I just was trying to speak.
I like picking on you, Rob. You've been around since I started, so it's always good to see you. Thank you for participating.
We have just a minute left. Is there any last minute burning question that anyone has? Well, we thank you all for participating. There's a whole bunch of information in the chat and links. And if you need any of that email, just follow up with us through our Charlotte Future email. We'd be happy to send you those. And thank you very much.